I don't like the looks of this place. If we get ambushed...
It's just as I thought. Master Liu Bei cannot be allowed to pass this way.
Good grief. This may be trouble.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Night Owl channel. Welcome back to the series where we're counting down the top Dynasty Warriors characters after the latest game. Coming in at number 42, we have Pang Tong. Pang Tong was a short-lived military strategist for Liu Bei, who was one of the notable figures in helping his lord seize Yi province. He is sometimes addressed as the fledgling phoenix, the clashing opposite of the sleeping dragon. Although he is a talented strategist, his odd appearance and snide personality were said to repulse the lords in the Three Kingdoms era. This was expanded in the novel to have people state he was ugly out of pure bias. Regardless, Pang Tong was a clever mind who was as kind-hearted out of practicality, though he didn't share his friend Zhuge Liang's affinity for administration affairs. Before we jump into how Pang Tong has changed over the past 20 years, take a look at the popularity polls to see why Pang Tong is up here at number 42. In the first popularity poll, Pang Tong received 667 votes out of a total of 75,000, putting him at the 46th spot. In the second popularity poll, Pang Tong drops down to the 61st spot. And then in my personal ranking, Pang Tong is going to jump all the way up to the 24th spot. So for me personally, Pang Tong is a lot higher versus the other two polls, because I actually enjoy Pang Tong. My favorite part of the character is definitely his weapon style, and when we get to his weapon style, we'll talk more about it. And playing through his stories and his Musou modes and all the games will definitely reinforce that. Definitely one of my favorites when it comes to his weapon style, and we'll talk more about that when we get to that section. But Pang Tong, definitely a fun character to play as. Before we jump to how he's changed though, let's talk about Pang Tong's background and personality for people who don't know. So again, Pang Tong was a Chinese politician. He was an advisor to the warlord Liu Bei in the late Eastern Han Dynasty of China. In his youth, Pang Tong studied alongside Zhuge Liang and Zhu Shu under the highly esteemed Sima Hui. And in the actual series, they have Zhuge Liang approaching Pang Tong and convincing him to join him. He was given the nickname of Fledgling Phoenix due to his abilities, but it was also partially insulting because fledgling phoenixes were known to be ugly in legend. He briefly served Zhou Yu before joining Liu Bei in 209 after the latter became the provincial governor. Under the recommendation of both Lu Su and Zhuge Liang, Liu Bei appointed him to assistant officer and promoted him to military advisor general of the household. He advised Liu Bei to take over Yi province and accompanied him on his campaign against the warlord Liu Zhang, but he was killed by a stray arrow during a battle at Luo County in 214. Pang Tong during his time under Liu Bei was a very important person to Liu Bei and the Shu Kingdom at the time, and due to his benevolent and virtuous personality, he fit in very well with Liu Bei and his forces. Although he would make some blunt statements from time to time, his heart was always in the right place. With each little insult that he may let slip, Pang Tong mends it with well-meaning advice as well as being more openly casual with others. And I really like the personality of Pang Tong. He was extremely gifted and, very smart when it came to strategy and determining what the right path and what the right thing was to do. But I still like the fact that he cared about the other people within the army, especially people that we didn't really expect for him to sympathize for. And we'll talk more about that when we get to his relationships. With that being said, let's go ahead and jump into how Pang Tong has changed over the past 20 years within the Dynasty Warriors series. He's been a playable character since Dynasty Warriors 3, so he's gone through quite a bit of changes. Let's go ahead and start off with his appearance. His appearance throughout each iteration of the game is relatively the same. It changes from what type of, clothes he's wearing or what he's actually looking like. It's all around the theme of masking his appearance and not really showing too much of what he looks like really at all. Like I said in the beginning, he tended to be, he was an ugly, not a very attractive looking person. And I think the game does a very good job hiding that appearance. And that's why I think they gave that to him. Every game he looks pretty much the same except for Dynasty Warriors 6. Dynasty Warriors 6, he noticeably looks different, but it all revolves around his theme. He looks pretty good, whether he's wearing like a little helmet or a hat, and he's got his robe on and carrying his weapon, whatever it is. And he seems to generally look decent for who Pang Tong is. He's got that mysterious kind of look to him with his appearance. And of course, when he's first introduced back in Dynasty Warriors 3, you're like, who is this guy? Why is he so small? And why is he covering, pretty much every part of his body except for his eyes? And it fits him very well as the character he is. He was a hermit for so long, and then he came out when Zhuge Liang asked him to come join the army and use his talents to help Liu Bei realize his dream of virtue and benevolence. And because Pang Tong already was a virtuous and benevolent person, and that's how he kind of assessed and evaluated people, him going to serve Liu Bei is no issue at all because he has those same qualities that Pang Tong looks for in a person. Now, moving on to his weapon style, and this is why he is so high for me. His weapon style is probably one of the most fun weapon styles among the Dynasty Warriors cast, and he basically uses a staff throughout the majority of his playthrough. From Dynasty Warriors 3 to Dynasty Warriors 7, he uses a staff. In Dynasty Warriors 8 and 9, I would still consider it a staff, but it is specifically called the Shadow Fan. Now, it's not the staff that like Zhou Yu uses or like any sort of like bow staff where like it's long. It's the magical, Zhang Jiao type of staff where it has, magical elements to it. And it's just very, very fun to play. Realistically, I mean, you can't really say that's what a weapon would be during that time. But the game has had that magical element since the beginning with Zhang Jiao and his staff, so it just fits well with Pang Tong and his abilities and what he can do with his weapon. Since his playable debut, Pang Tong's weapon is extremely powerful. It's extremely fun to use. AoE attacks out the wazoo. It makes it so much easier to get through levels, and I had a lot of fun playing with it from the earlier games all the way up until Dynasty Warriors 9. I don't really have any complaints about his weapon style. His Musou attacks is probably the only weakness to the weapon style. In the earlier games, absolutely destructive. I mean, it does tons of AoE damage. I pretty much destroyed people without even really trying using his Musou attacks. And then in Dynasty Warriors 7 and 8, the Musou attacks were okay. They resembled the look of a phoenix, so his main attacks was that he was, he would get up on his little like fan and he would ride the staff or the fan and in the form of a phoenix. And his second or like other Musou attacks would be like healing ability. So he would like literally lay down. It was called like power nap. He would just literally just roll over, yawn, take a nap, and do a little bit of damage as he woke up. But nothing too flashy in terms of like Dynasty Warriors 7 and 8 with his Musou attacks. That's probably the weakest points of his Musou attacks, but I thought they were just fine. He's always kind of giving me that Yoda vibe, like he has the height and the obviously physical appearance, but his abilities and of course the affinity with the Shoot Kingdom and it being green and everything, it just he's always giving me a Yoda vibe. He's flying around on his like staff sometimes, and he has like incredible powers coming out of him using his staff and everything. And I've always enjoyed playing Pang Tong, and that's why he's so high up for me, because when I first made the list, I remembered playing through Pang Tong, absolutely destructive with his weapon style, and I always enjoyed the staff and the fan that he has, and never really had a problem with it. I thought it was actually really fun to play as. Now, moving on to his voice acting, I want to say his voice acting is actually pretty good. It's only distinctly different in Dynasty Warriors 9. He drops from the the voice acting that he has, or the normal voice that he has in all the other games.
The people are happy to be your subjects. A benevolent man would go to them.
And he transitions to a raspier kind of sound.
Ah, Master Liu Bei. I'm just keeping an eye on things in the area.
I think it kind of fits him. I mean, again, he was a hermit for so long. He didn't really have many interactions with other people, and it kind of fits his personality and who he is as a character. And I definitely enjoyed the other voices as well. I definitely have more of a favoring towards like the Dynasty Warriors 6 through 8 one. I think that's probably my favorite. The really early games, I think he had more of a higher pitched kind of voice.
Now is the time to attack. We shall win. Fine, let's go.
But nothing to where I would complain about it. Like, the voice fit him for who Pang Tong was, so. But I can't complain too much about his voice acting. Again, I think it fits him just fine. Even for all the different games that he goes through, I think his voice acting was just fine. Now let's go ahead and finish up with his significant battles, his relationships, and his deaths. Starting off with his relationships, we'll do relationships first because his battles kind of go with his deaths. So we'll start with relationships, and we're going to start off with the most, like, not obvious one, which is going to be Wei Yan. So Pang Tong has an interesting relationship with Wei Yan, and I didn't really notice it until I played through Pang Tong's Musou modes and all of his stories and stuff, but they actually do have a little bit of a relationship. It's not like super prevalent or anything, but it's definitely there. I mean, at one point during, like, I think Dynasty Warriors 4 or 5, Wei Yan, like, approaches him, and Pang Tong turns around and he's like, oh god, look at that face.
Poor thing. That truly is a face that only a mother could love.
But I would say Pang Tong and Wei Yan have somewhat of a relationship. He sympathizes with Wei Yan and encourages him to stay true to his beliefs. So he believes in who Wei Yan is. He trusts him implicitly. And it's good to see. It's cool to see that somebody has that kind of relationship with Wei Yan, because we went over Wei Yan early in the series, and I feel like he was always kind of alienated for his speech impediment or whatever it was, or how he looks. And it's cool to see that another character takes interest and actually likes Wei Yan. I like seeing that in the earlier games. There's a couple instances in Dynasty Wars 7 and 8. They have a couple cut scenes, and Pang Tong's asking for help when they attack at Chengdu and stuff, but small relationship there, cool to see. Now his more significant relationships, and it's clear throughout all the games, is going to be with Zhuge Liang and with Liu Bei. So with Zhuge Liang, he is good friends with Zhuge Liang, is one of the few in Shu who can talk as his intellectual equal. Again, Zhuge Liang within the series comes to Pang Tong and asks him to join Liu Bei for it's a good cause, and he knows who Pang Tong is. They went to school together, they were students together, they learned strategy together, they learned from a very esteemed person together, and they have that relationship throughout the game, the series, and of course in history as well. So due to that mutual respect that they had for each other, Zhuge Liang recommended Pang Tong to become a higher officer, a higher position within Liu Bei's ranks because of the inherent trust that they had with each other. And eventually it would get to the point where Pang Tong and Zhuge Liang would be at the same level in terms of advisory to Liu Bei. And I guess we can jump right into Liu Bei's relationship as well with Pang Tong, because of the tactical knowledge that Pang Tong would provide to Liu Bei during his time under Liu Bei. And Pang Tong is one of the main ones to convince Liu Bei to attack Yi province and take it away from Liu Zhang. And I guess we can kind of incorporate the significant battles along with his death, because it's all going to tie in with this one battle. So Pang Tong's most significant battle was at Chengdu, the battle against Liu Zhang and seizing control of Yi province. That was the main battle Pang Tong was known for, and of course that's where he passes away. Before we dive deep into the Battle of Chengdu, I want to mention the Battle of Chibi really quickly. So Chibi was a huge battle for the Three Kingdoms era. It's probably the biggest battle of the Three Kingdoms era, and it was the battle between Cao Cao and the combined forces of Liu Bei and Sun Quan. So Pang Tong during that battle played a very key role by being one of the key components for that strategy, which was the fire attack against Cao Cao's naval fleet, resulting in the victory for the Allied forces. So Pang Tong played the key part of chaining the ships together. That way, when the fire attack was launched and Cao Cao's ships were all chained together, the fire would spread faster among all the ships, and they couldn't get away as quickly because the ships were, of course, chained together. Throughout most of the games, Pang Tong is either already on Cao Cao's side and then defects over, or, he shows up later in the battle to begin his part of the plan. But among that battle, that was his key moment. He gets in, he chains the ships, and then he retreats. Now, diving back into the battle against Liu Zhang. So Pang Tong outlined a plan for Liu Bei to follow, telling him the best way to advance towards Chengdu and to take it down. And unfortunately, I believe in the game, sometimes it's a little different depending on which game you play, but basically what happens is Pang Tong is going to take a different route than the main units that are attacking, because he wants to surround the castle. Like, his plan was to surround the castle and force Liu Zhang to surrender rather than kill him. Like, they just wanted him to surrender. So Pang Tong takes a different, more isolated route than some of the other officers. And unfortunately, he's actually using Liu Bei's horse, the hex mark. So Liu Bei actually gives him his horse because the path he was taking was harder to traverse. It was steeper, or it was like a mountainy area. And hex mark was a horse with a lot of experience, and he can get in, get out. And that was the point of him, loaning his horse to him. However, when, Pang Tong arrives on hex mark, it's a very noticeable horse. The enemy notices it. They think it's Liu Bei. They shoot him down, and Pang Tong unfortunately gets killed. And pretty much every single game has a different variation of how Pang Tong is, shot to death with arrows, but it's all the same premise. He goes down the road by himself. Zhang Ren appears with his archers. They ambush him, they surround him, and they shoot him to death with the arrows, and Pang Tong usually dies. Unless you're playing Pang Tong, or if you're there with him, he usually is shot to death and killed at the Battle of Chengdu. Liu Bei was deeply saddened by Pang Tong's death, and he would weep whenever Pang Tong was mentioned. He was posthumously made a secondary marquis after Liu Bei became emperor and established the state of Shuhan in 221. He even went so far to have a tomb and shrine constructed for Pang Tong near Luo County. So Liu Bei obviously had a very close relationship with Pang Tong, and he definitely cherished him as a strategist and as an officer under his ranks, and was definitely hurt that, one, he kind of blamed himself because he gave him his horse, so he kind of had the inference that the enemy saw his horse and deemed it was him and tried to kill Liu Bei, but it was actually Pang Tong riding the horse. So unfortunately, Pang Tong and Hexmark were both killed during that ambush, and that's how Pang Tong's story comes to an end. I mean, that's all I really have for Pang Tong here. The fledgling Phoenix, definitely a legendary character when it comes to this series. And again, he's one of the higher characters for me. Top 25 as of that current list. And I don't think he would move too much. I mean, if anything, he'll move a little bit more up. But I really enjoy his playstyle. His weapon style is like the most fun, especially in the earlier games when it was harder to go against like the normal privates and stuff. Definitely a lot more easier to use Pang Tong. All those AoE attacks would save me. His Musou attacks were absolutely insane, and that's why he's so high for me. The weapon style is the main attraction for me with Pang Tong. That's not to say I don't like his personality or like the way he looks or anything like that. I definitely like seeing that relationship with Wei Yan because, again, I like Wei Yan. I think Wei Yan's a cool character, and I don't think he gets a lot of the respect I think he deserves. I think he's a really cool character, and it's really cool to see Pang Tong have, you know, that empathy towards him, that sympathy towards Wei Yan, and just, you know, not like a pity thing, but like just almost like a belief in him. Like, do the best you can, believe in yourself. He believed that Wei Yan could do great things if he just stayed true to himself. But yeah, that's all I really have for Pang Tong here. That's how he's changed over the past 20 years. Don't really have much else for him here. Let me know what you think about Pang Tong down below. If you guys use him, if you guys play with him. Do you guys like his weapon style as much as I do? A couple more episodes and we're out of the 40s and into the 30s, getting to the more popular and higher characters on the list. Very exciting. Hope you guys are enjoying the series so far. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching, everyone.
Hey, fool.